Yo, what is up, guys? It is Pocket here with Pocket Gaming, and today we're starting our very first video into our Zero to Hero. And today we have our Resto Shaman. I plan on doing a video for every single healer, with the exception of a Holy Paladin and a Resto Druid, because I already have them over 2,500. So we're going to have to skip out on those ones. But I did want to start with the Resto Shaman. So I'm pretty excited about this. And I did lose some previous clips from my Resto Shaman, so we're actually starting out with a little bit more gear and a little bit more IO already because I lost those clips. So not a big deal. We're going to get into this. Really excited to start this. So here we go. So starting with this week's affixes, we have Fortified, Incorporeal, and Sanguine. And now we're going to take a look at our talents. And this build that I'm using is a basic generic one. I'm going to leave it up here so you guys can look at it if you want. You can pause it. But as far as the talent build goes, it might change throughout this gameplay. So we're going to kind of play around with it, see what we like, see what's better. But we want to pick the talents that are going to help us the most when it comes to these week's affixes. So this week, the biggest one we're going to want to do is get that Hex talent, which is going to allow us to CC the Incorporeals that spawn, which is honestly the most obnoxious thing ever, and you're probably going to hear about me complain about it more as this video goes on. Now we're going to take a look at our character pane. Oh, and our character's name is Pocket Surge. But we are looking to start at this 422 item level. And last thing before we get started, if you are starting a new character, you can come over here to Lindormi and go to her buy page, and you can actually buy item level 441 gear with flight stones. And you can do this on a main and then trade it over to your alt character if you want, or if you have tons of flight stones on the current character, you can also buy them here. But your IO has to be at least 1,000 rating before you can do that. So I just figured that out, thought I'd share. Alright, and our first stop today is going to be a plus 10 Marzan's Rise. As I mentioned earlier, I have no idea what I'm doing on this Resto Shaman. I'm probably going to be playing it completely wrong, and the hardcore Resto Shaman players out there are going to be like, what is this guy doing? But we're going to do our best, so I would appreciate any tips, tricks, or pointers that you guys have. Let me know. And then also let me know if there is anything that you want assistance with in your gameplay, and I'll be happy to elaborate and help you guys out with that as well. The first thing that I want to talk about as we get started here, and you're going to hear me say this over and over and over again, but if you want to be successful in Mythic Plus and doing keys at any level, oh, maybe not the top level, but at any level that we're doing now, you have to go into this key like you are the only person that is going to properly do these mechanics. Like you are the only person that's going to kick. You are the only person that's going to take care of the affix every time it spawns. You can't really rely on your team until they prove themselves. So you can't go in with the mentality thinking, oh, the other guy will take care of it. Because ultimately, if they don't, you're going to fail. And it's a team. We're going in as a team. So if you fail, if they fail, everyone fails. So don't rely on your team until they've proven themselves. Alright, team, I am the absolute best at this gauntlet. No, actually, though, I am so terrible at this thing. But honestly, I really enjoy it. In a Mythic Plus scenario, sometimes it's a little frustrating trying to get through this in a reasonable amount of time. But other than that, it is super fun. And honestly, I'm happy I got this on camera because this is like the only time that I've ever made it through. I always have to take the portal of shame. But that's okay, guys. We've all been there, right? All of us? But it's okay. I'm sure my team will be here any second to help me open this portal. Any second. They'll be right here. Come on, guys. Oh, I see him on the mini-map. Any second. Okay, guys, we're doing this alone. As we move along here, I did want to mention the healing add-on that I'm using, and it is called Voodoo. I like using this healing add-on because it allows me to click on the panels that you see at the bottom of my screen. And depending on what type of mouse click, whether it's left click, right click, middle mouse button, they all do different spells. And what this allows me to do is heal using my mouse, and then I still have my DPS abilities, my damaging abilities on my left hand using 1, 2, 3, 4, the number keys. So I find this very effective compared to a mouse over macro, because when you're using a mouse over macro, you have to hover your mouse over the panels and then click your number keys or whatever you have in keybind to, and sometimes it's harder to, there's just more keybinds that you have to deal with, while you can just focus on healing with your mouse and doing damage with your number keys on your left hand.
Rallying shout.
We did get super lucky with this key. The warrior and the hunter are just pumping the entire time. So I'm not sure what their item level was, but it's definitely a lot higher than what you need in a plus 10. So this first key is a really good start, made it super easy for us to get through all the bosses and all of the ads and stuff like that. So good first start for sure. As we move on to the Anduin Lothar boss, I did want to mention healers. If you are having problems with healing this boss, don't worry, it is probably not your fault, and this is why. This boss has an ability called Battle Senses, and I'll just read it real quick. Upon defeating an enemy, Lothar gains Battle Senses. This effect stacks. Successful melee attacks hone his skill, consuming a stack and inflicting 8,525 damage to all players. So anytime that he turns and does that frontal cone, or he does his whirlwind and he kills any of those ally NPCs that are running around, he gets a massive damage buff. So you want to position yourself in between the edge and the boss. That way when he does his cleave, he cleaves off the map and he doesn't actually hit anybody. And then when you get the whirlwind on you, you also don't want to run straight through the map. You want to try and keep him to the outside. So if you see your DPS friends doing that and you're having issues healing, that's probably why. It's not because you're a bad healer. And trust me, this took me a minute to figure out why I could not heal one of these dungeons I was doing, because they were just messing up the mechanics and I didn't understand the mechanics, and so I just thought I was bad because I couldn't keep anybody alive. But then I finally figured it out. So if you had that issue, hopefully this helps you. You're not a bad healer. Probably, right? Yeah, you're fine. So overall, we had a really smooth run for our first key of the day, which is awesome. It got us in good spirits. It got us ready to do more in what sometimes can be a terrible time pugging. But not today, because we have these awesome hunter here carrying us. And with that, our first key of the day was a success. We got a +2, +14 item level, and hoping to get some loot because we have a lot of items that we need to replace. So drum roll please as we open it up. Nice! And we got a dagger. Let's check to see if that's actually an upgrade. And it totally is an upgrade. I don't even know what the shaman priority stats are at this point, but hey, that's a purple item and it's replacing a green item, so regardless, it's good. As we move on, we are jumping into a +10 Darkheart Thicket, and this is going to give us a lot of IO score because we don't have a single Darkheart Thicket timed on a fortified week. So starting out, we are running in. The tank is going to pull all the way to the bear, which is awesome. That's how this pull is done pretty much all of the time. And at this point too, I realized I had traded out my poison totem to get rid of poisons, and that was not a good move because you definitely need to cleanse poisons in this dungeon, and now I have no ability to do that. So I think the paladin was doing a really good job at dispelling some of those, but ultimately make sure you come in here with your totem ready to go to get rid of those poisons. Moving on to the double bear pull. I know sometimes this can be an issue, especially on a fortified week. These guys do a lot of damage, AoE burst, and they drop these little creatures on the ground as well that cause issues. But honestly, we got another really solid group. These guys are doing lots of damage, doing the mechanics, taking care of the incorporeals that constantly spawn. So overall, pretty easy. And two, one of the abilities that I forgot Shaman has, and I figure it out here, is the cast and move ability. Here you can see I'm like struggling to stay alive, to not jump into that stuff that's all over the ground. And I'm like, wait a second, I can cast, I can heal and move at the same time with Spirit Walker's Grace. This is awesome. So that is a really fun ability that Shamans have that I'm really enjoying now that I'm getting it more into my rotation as I'm playing this character. As you can see, I'm sitting down right now, trying to get a little bit mana before this boss engages me and puts me in combat, which he does here. And one thing I've been struggling with on my Shaman is, man, I am blowing through my mana so fast. And I don't know if it's because I'm playing the class wrong, I'm casting Chain Heal too much, or if just Shamans are more of an inefficient healer when it comes to mana. Something I'm trying to figure out. So I know, well, I guess I know I'm playing the class wrong, and I'm going to relate this to kind of Holy Paladin because that's my main. On my Holy Paladin, I am constantly rotating my major cooldowns because that's what you have to do. You can't use all of your major cooldowns on one pull because then you have nothing for the next pull. And I don't use, if you look, I don't use my cooldowns ever. My ascendants, my totems, like I don't touch those things at all through this entire dungeon. I mean, I might, but for the most part, I'm not using them. And so that's probably where a lot of my mana consumption comes from, is I'm not using these key core abilities that are going to do lots of healing and allow me to conserve on some of that mana. So that's my guesses right now. Once again, I could just be playing this totally wrong and not using a healing ability that I should be using. We do lose our paladin here to that frontal charge from the boss. Not a big deal. Our enhancement shaman is pumping out that damage, so we get through here pretty quick. The druid tank could use a battle res. Oh, even the Death Knight could use a battle res too, but I think just because we think we have this, we're not going to bother wasting it. So we get this guy down with minimal difficulty, you know, and then we just keep moving right on our way. Things start to get a little spicy right here on this next pull. I know sometimes if you don't have your kicks lined up, this can be an issue. So we're going really well. We have an awesome stun by the Death Knight there, and then I also forgot as a shaman, I have an incapacitator totem and Thunder Wave, which as you can see, I don't use it once because I don't know that I have them. It really helps to actually read your abilities before you start playing a new character. Just, you know, thought I'd let you know. So we're getting lots of fears going out here, trying to keep everybody up. I'm panicking, trying to get the hex out on this guy. We do lose somebody, and I believe I almost die here. I dropped to like 0% health, 10%. Okay, yeah, I got really far down there. We got the dispel off, pumping those heals back out, and I make it through just fine, you know, easy. We finally get this next boss started as we were sitting around waiting for this shaman to run back after dying, which was a great thing because we were able to get our mana back up. And honestly, the fight goes super smooth. Really no issues. And the team is just pumping and doing their thing. This Frost Death Knight though, man, like, I mean, these other guys are compensating for him, but dang. I don't know, Frost Death Knight is doing a little rough this season, but this tank is almost beating him on that damage meter right now. And once again, as you can see, I do not use a single cooldown ability. Just straight, raw chain heals and, I was going to say flash heals. Riptide, Healing Surge, that's the other ability. I couldn't remember the name of it. Got Paladin in my head right now. Yeah, we're just straight up raw healing through this fight right now. And mana conservation was not bad at all. There's not a lot of damage other than the big knockback that he does to everybody, so his team's doing really good. And that Death Knight drops to the bottom of the TPS chart, so hey man, maybe you should figure something out, because it's not looking too good. We start this next boss at around 55% mana or so. Shouldn't be too big of an issue. In a hierarchy, it might cause an issue, especially with my ability to play this class. But that's okay. And I definitely drop my Windrush Totem here because I know how to play my class and I like to help my team out. No, not really. Obviously, the other shaman used it, okay? But moving forward, this is one of those fights where I find that Spirit Walker's Grace is god tier. Because during that knockback, you just pop that thing off, dude, and you don't... What knockback? There isn't one. Because we're running through it and we're casting. No issues whatsoever. And obviously, I'm going to use it for the entire duration of the downdraft. No, I'll just use it now. That's fine. We use it for a good solid 0.5 seconds, get its use, and then we go back to doing our damaging and healing. Let's talk a little bit about some of the shaman's unique utility that really benefits you and your group. Starting with Wind Shear. Not every healer gets a kick, and Wind Shear is amazing because not only is it on a 12-second cooldown, but it's also ranged. The only other healer that has a ranged kick is Preservation Evoker, and that's on like a 40-second cooldown. So this is super effective to use, and every time you kick something is less damage ultimately. So you should always have Wind Shear on cooldown as much as possible. I know if you're not really used to kicking, sometimes it's hard to get into that routine of constantly kicking and paying attention and stuff like that. But you should try to do your best to kick anything and everything, even if it might not seem important. And then as you kind of go throughout different dungeons and stuff, you'll learn what should be prioritized on the kick. And as you can see here, I am not in the habit of using my Wind Shear constantly. There's tons of kicks that I could have got off during this this pull right here, and I got a few off, but it could have been way more advantageous to use more, but that's okay. It's part of learning. And last little tip about Wind Shear, you can do this, you don't have to do this. I have it set to a button that sits right behind my middle mouse wheel. So I got two buttons right there. So on every single character, my kick is always in the same spot, and it is always that button behind my mouse wheel. That way I can get those kicks off as quickly and efficiently as possible just using my left finger. And it's super nice, and I recommend it, honestly. Next, let's talk about Capacitator Totem. This should be used as a kick as well, and it's awesome because you can kick pretty much everything. Some mobs are immune to stun, but for the most part, if you pull a large pack, you could drop that and kick pretty much everything that's there. So that's very effective and should be used as much as possible as well. It's a little bit harder to use because it goes off after 2 seconds, so you kind of have to plan ahead, but still very effective, still very powerful. Next we have Thunderstorm, which should be run with the talent Thunder Shock. And once again, this is another AoE kick, and this is extremely powerful because this one's on a 25-second cooldown. And you want to take the Thunder Shock talent because you don't want to knock them back, because then ultimately you're going to push them out of other DPS's AoE abilities and stuff like that. So having the knock up is way better. So ultimately, shamans have 3 types of kicks, and that is fantastic compared to any other healer that's out there. So you can use that utility to your advantage and really go from being a decent Resto Shaman healer to an amazing Shaman healer by using your entire utility and kit. And this will help your success in pugging as well. And moving on to the last boss here. Again, very smooth, solid group. We don't have any issues. One of the big things that do cause issues for the healer on this fight is feed on the weak. So you can see that I have the cooldowns and bars, and I can kind of keep track of when those abilities are going to happen. But feed on the weak, as soon as that starts casting on whoever it is it's casting on, you need to focus all of your healing on that person, because that hits so hard. And sometimes it's hard while you have to run around and stuff, but should be your priority. And if somebody dies on this fight, it's usually to feed on the weak, unless they stand in one of these swirlies right there.
Nightmare Bolt.
There we have it, another nice, clean, smooth dungeon. We did get the 2 chests and added on 56 Mythic Plus rating. And we got some boots, and once again, massive upgrade. So let's replace those green items with the purple item here. And we got the Draconically Superior achievement. Let's go. Putting us at a 432 item level. Man, and I don't know what was going on today, but we were having issues getting into keys after those first 2 dungeons that we ran. I probably sat here looking for a dungeon for probably over 20 minutes. And a tip that I recommend for getting into dungeons, and this is a little bit harder to DPS because you guys are competing with so many more people, but you honestly need to respect the Mythic Plus score. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the screen right now, I have tons of keys. Like, I have a 14 timed, but I have tons of other keys that I don't have timed at all, and it's putting me at an 836 Mythic Plus rating score right now. Even though I know that I am capable of doing up to a 14 key, obviously, people aren't going to take you. So you need to do your best to fill out all of your dungeons and shoot for keys that are in that area. Granted, you can get a dungeon that is higher if someone just takes you by chance, but to be more successful and to get into dungeons quicker, you really need to just be looking around in your area. So I'm pretty much looking for 10s and 11s, and even having problems trying to find those keys. Finally, we get accepted into a dungeon, plus 13. Wait a second, why is there another healer in here? What, this guy's DPS, right? And they kicked me. Wonderful. After another long while of searching, we finally got it into a plus 11 Galakron's Fall. And this monk healer here has a higher score and item level than me. I'm like hoping that they don't kick me and invite this guy. Please don't kick me, please don't kick me. Alright, I think we're safe. We should be good. Alright, we finally get our tank in here and we start moving along. And on a fortified week, I recommend using Bloodlust here. Just pulling everything and getting that Bloodlust on cooldown as quickly as possible. If you take a look at my healing bars too, you will notice that occasionally somebody's name will turn a blue color. And what that indicates to me is that they have something on them that needs to be dispelled. Voodoo automatically does this. So a blue nameplate change is a magical effect that can be dispelled. Purple is a curse. Green is a disease, and it'll only light up if I'm able to do it on that class. So purple only shows up for me when I'm playing like a shaman because I have a D curse, and green will never pop up for me because I don't have a disease cleanse that I can use other than my totem. And I'm sure there's a way I can change that to where it just pops up on every single class, But this is kind of the way I've been doing the entire time, and that's how I like it. And once again, just to try to keep everything uniform, I always put cleanse on my mouse number 3 thumb button. And that's just when I'm doing other characters. Any time that I need to use a cleanse, it's always the same button every time. Makes it so much easier than trying to have different key bindings for the same ability on different characters. Taking a look at our group composition here, this is not ideal. When you're doing lower keys like in the 10, 11 range, having the meta is not required. The only time you really need meta is if you're pushing plus 25s or above. If you're not doing that, the amount of benefit that you're going to get is it's not a huge difference. And so don't worry about always trying to get the meta class or something like that. Like you're trying way too hard in a plus 10 or 11 key if that's the case. But the group composition here, the biggest issue is we have 3 casters, a warlock, mage, and an evoker. And the issue with that is we have such a low uptime for kicks because the cooldowns for each of those classes is so high. I always try to get at least 2 melee inside of my group that have those kicks. Now granted, most of the time melee people don't even have kick on their action bar, so they never press it, but you can always hope for the best, right? And if you play a healer, you know that this trash pull on this platform are by far our favorite pulls of all time. We just have the most fun here. No, actually this is the most toxic trash in the entire game, and I can't stand this. And I will complain about this every single time we do these trash pulls. The biggest issue here, once again, is those kicks. We have 3 range kicks, and me, of course, but I'm not that good, right? So, trying to take care of these dispels here, and this little 11 key, those dispels aren't really doing a whole lot of damage, so it's not something to really worry about. But these other pulls that are coming up with the little leeches and the dragon looking thing, getting those burns, those enervates, those need to be kicked. And once again, I'm not using my capacitator totem, I'm not using thunderstorm, which would be very helpful in these pulls. And moving forward, and after watching this and evaluating my own gameplay, I'm definitely going to change and get better, so that way this goes a little bit easier. But I don't think I've ever done these pulls and never had someone not die. Someone always dies on these pulls, and this is probably the hardest trash pull in any single dungeon currently out right now. Like, this is very difficult to heal, especially on those higher keys. So if you have issues as a healer healing through this, that's okay. Everybody does. If you don't have issues healing this, then honestly, you're a god, because this is tough. This is hard. Moving on to the Manifested Timeways boss. It actually took me a while to really understand how this boss works. So I'm going to kind of go over it just a little bit to give you guys tips, because it was only like a month ago that I figured this out, and this boss has been out forever. So first, let's look at the debuffs that you get while standing in the different quadrants on the floor. We have Accelerated Time and Decaying Time. Accelerating Time expedites afflicted target's connection to time, inflicting damage every 1 second and additionally increasing movement speed by 30%. And Decaying Time decays afflicted target's connection to time, inflicting arcane damage every 3 seconds and additionally reducing damage taken. And these dots are important to understand for when you get the Chrono Faded debuff on you. When standing in Accelerated Time with Chrono Faded, it increases the amount of damage that happens over time and making it more difficult for healing. When you're standing in the Decaying Time, you get the damage reduction and it doesn't tick as much. However, you want to be standing in Accelerated Time when you get dispelled, making it a fast effect rather than super slow. And on top of that, if you are dispelled with Chrono Faded, do not move. If you move and are dispelled at the same time, you can take multiple ticks of the chrono faded blast. If you are standing still, you will take 0 damage when you're dispelled. So the easiest way to kind of deal with this in a pug group where it's not coordinated is you as the healer, you should have in your head who is going to dispel, or who you are going to dispel first. So if you're the healer, you should always dispel yourself first. So you should always stand in the accelerated time, dispel yourself, and then go stand in the decaying time. That way when the next one goes off, you take less damage from the explosion. And if you don't get the chrono faded buff during that phase, or debuff, just always stand in the decaying time. That way when the explosions go off, you're taking reduced damage, ultimately making it easier for you to heal. Moving on to this next room, these pulls can sometimes be very difficult. I have problems healing this all the time because the dragon is pulsing. When these slimes die, they also pulse damage, so ultimately a lot of damage going out. And when the tank double pulls these, it makes it twice as hard. So this tank was super nice, and he only single pulled each of these, including the next pack, so I really appreciate that from him, especially from being new to the shaman healing. But it is a really good idea to make sure you do have some healing cooldowns for these pulls, because you never know when the tank is just going to double pull it.
Light spew.
We take down the last 2 trash packs without any issues and move on to the Blight of Galakron boss. I was being extra here and I thought the mage didn't know what he was doing, so I took the corrosion from him and then realized that the frontal was going off, so I tried to give it to the tank and ended up just standing on the frontal.
Corrosive infusion. Corrosion. Corrosion.
And being a shaman healer, I have nothing when it comes to external defensives. So when someone gets that corrosion debuff on them, it hits very hard, so I just am pumping as much heals as I can into them. Usually on a different class, I would use an external on those people, but we don't have that option. And I take advantage of Spirit Walker's Grace here again as well, moving from those tornadoes while casting. I am really enjoying it.
Corrosive infusion.
I almost die here, but fortunately we get a massive healing surge crit that kept me alive. I don't think I would have survived if that didn't happen. I get the hex off on this first Incorporeal and then realize that no one else CC'd the other one, so I barely get a kick off on it before he casts, and the mage casts a polymorph. Wonderful gameplay right there.
Incinerating blight breath.
And overall, I'm still kind of feeling like I'm having troubles healing. And I don't know if it's from the style, or again if I'm just not playing correctly, but I'm draining through my mana all the time, and I feel like my heals just aren't doing as much heals as I'm used to on like a Holy Paladin. Or it could just be that my item level is a bit lower for like in a plus 11 key, but I don't think it is. But it just doesn't feel like my throughput is there. We clear through the cave really easily. Once again, we have a really solid group. These guys are doing lots of damage and really using the entire utility of their class kits. We pop Lust right at the beginning to get all that damage going out, and I get the debuff on me. The mage stands in it for some reason. Oh, and then he types "I'm dumb," so we get the battle res on him, and we pop some of our healing cooldowns here. And we are doing our best to keep everybody up. I honestly thought it was going to be harder to heal Chromie, but I cast a couple healing surges and healing waves, and she's at full health, no issues. So now we can just focus on healing the team.
Earth Surge. Pulverizing Exhalation. Cataclysmic
As
Ability.
we start his burn phase here, I just said screw it and decided to pop every single healing cooldown I have. So Ascension goes down, mana, or not mana tide, healing tide totem goes down, lifelink goes down, and we are just bumped up to over 300k HPS, because why not? So far, these first 3 dungeons have been really good. We got 153 points, bringing us up to 989 Mythic Plus rating. So that's huge, and I'm pretty sure too, one of these guys trades me. Oh, he doesn't. He doesn't trade me. I asked for this mace. It was gonna be a huge upgrade for me, and this is his response. Want the T-Mog, sorry. Dude, never has anyone not traded an item because they wanted the transmog. Come on, man. But that's okay, we did get 2 pieces of loot in the last 2 dungeons that we did, so can't complain too much. Rolling into the next dungeon, we have ourselves a Waycrest Manor. And this is the first time that we're gonna see Sanguine because this is a plus 14. I was feeling pretty confident after those nice easy keys that we had. So I thought, hey, let's try and go a little bit higher and really test the limits of my playstyle. Because ultimately, in my opinion, the harder dungeon you do, the more difficult it is. The more you have to rely on your actual playstyle, and you figure out how to play your class better than if you're just doing easy keys. And Waycrest Manor is one of those dungeons where Sanguine really hurts the most because it just takes up the hallways constantly. So this is definitely one of the harder ones when it comes to Sanguine. Otherwise, I don't think Sanguine is too difficult of an affix to have to deal with. We clear up to the first boss without any issues, but we do pull the boss with me at around 50% mana, which in my playstyle is usually bad because I'm not super mana efficient yet. And then we use Heroism right off the rip to try and get it on cooldown as quickly as possible and try and get that damage burst out right there at the very beginning. From someone coming from being a Holy Paladin player, I don't really anticipate decursing because I don't have the ability to do that. So as you can see, everyone's name turned purple. That indicates that a decurse can happen. For whatever reason, I decide to decurse myself rather than the person who has the lowest amount of health, so that was kind of a poor play on my bit. And then the next thing that I'm most worried about here is going to be the Jagged Nettles, which comes out during Sister Briars. And once again, as a Holy Paladin, usually I can just bop that or I can bubble that and not have to worry about it. But because a Resto Shaman doesn't have any utility when it comes to that type of mechanic, we're just going to have to raw heal straight through it, and hopefully everything goes well with that. And at this point, I am completely out of mana. There's not a whole lot left I can do. I'm simply just trying to cast my small heals just to keep people up. But that kind of is what happens when you start a pull at 50% mana. We do lose one person there and almost lose the other Warlock. I barely have enough mana to cast a Healing Surge in time to get him up. Actually, no, I don't. I use it on myself to get the Jagged Nettles up. And then we go into getting the Warlock up. Overall, not too bad, especially for plus 14. We do lose the one person, but not a big deal, especially coming from the fact that we started the fight around 50% mana. So I definitely could have used a lot more of my cooldowns because I didn't use my totems or I didn't use Ascendance. So once again, it's something I'm still struggling with and forgetting about. Moving on to this next trash pack in the hallway, the tank kind of pulls early. We don't have our entire group here, which isn't ideal. But he ends up pulling this entire room, which can be doable if people are paying attention and getting the kicks off. Here I realize I have etch on me. I almost die. I try and come over into the corner to line of sight it because I kind of start panicking. Literally with 3 health left, I get the dispel off on the warlock and somehow I pull aggro and just get frontal cleaved. I use the reincarnate, get the hex off on the incorporeal, and then we start running back in to try and keep our team back up. It's a little harder jumping straight back into a pull coming from a battle res or reincarnate, so I try and get a baseline of healing out with a healing rain, but the edge ultimately ends up killing the paladin because I don't focus heal down the edge. I believe we just pulled another trash pack that came from up the stairs, so now things are looking really sketchy going into this hallway. And I understand that the tank is trying to kite the ads out of the sanguine, but he keeps line of sighting us when he goes around this corner, and having 2 warlocks, which honestly wouldn't be my first choice in team composition, he's line of sighting his team, his healing, his damage, and so preferably he should have turned and came back down the hallway the other way rather than going around the corner and line of sighting his entire group. In these pulls, etch is definitely your biggest concern as a healer, because left unchecked, that entire cast will one-shot anybody. So you have to really make sure that you are healing up the person that's targeting. And as the tank moves down the hallway, he turns the ads and just cleaves onto our other warlock, getting the one shot and just taking him out. So overall, this pull was super messy, and looking down at our DPS meter, one of our warlocks is just not pulling enough DPS. Our tank is beating them, and ultimately the low DPS things are lasting way too long when this stuff should be dead already, which is gonna be an issue coming up here soon. Moving on to this courtyard pull, I struggle with this pull on pretty much every single healer that I have on any level of keys, just because of the amount of kicks that need to happen from this pull. And as you can see, it doesn't go very well. There is too many of those infected thorns that are going out, and they constantly stack. So if one person gets hit and they get hit again, now they have 2 stacks of that poison on top of them, and it just hits so hard. So if you don't have those kicks perfectly timed up, and if you don't kill this trash pack fast enough, it's just going to get ultimately delayed. And coming in with the 2 warlocks both having an over 40-second kick, and I think I looked at the meters later after this dungeon, the Destruction Warlock doesn't kick an entire time in this dungeon. So we have me, a 40-second kick from the other Warlock, and then the Paladin. So that's all we got going on when it comes here. So this pull does not go very well, as you can see. So the tank pulls everything back, and we're trying to salvage this pull, but ultimately coming in as a healer once again after being resurrected or battle resed, you're not set up correctly. I don't have any of my riptides out. I don't have my shields out. I'm panicking, trying to get everybody up. I'm trying to kick the poisons that keep getting shot out, and it becomes a body run constantly back from the start, just trying to kill this pull. So we eventually get the pull, we kill all the mobs, but again, we are looking already at 15 deaths into this Waycrest Manor. We do finish up the rest of the courtyard, and we do add on 2 more deaths onto it, and we're moving right on to our Soulbound Goliath boss. This is super crucial, especially when you have ranged players. You need to be stacked underneath the boss, because when you get your thorns on you, there is nobody there to get you out. The tank doesn't even bother moving the boss over to get the cleave damage. So coming into this fight, just stack underneath the boss. There's no frontal that's going to happen. There's no reason why, as a ranged player, you cannot stand right underneath the boss. And even that's what I'm doing as a healer. I'm staying close by, even though I know I'm not going to get the thorns, because healers don't get the thorns. In my opinion as well, the tank should be able to take up to 40 stacks from this boss before they need to drag the Goliath into the fire. Dragging the Goliath into the fire causes so much damage that you can't afford to constantly bring it in every 10 or 20 stacks. You have to hold it out. You have to use your defensives and rotate them. And honestly, it shouldn't be an issue. The Goliath at this point is already down to 30% health. We should get this kill without any issues. And then the tank panics, pulls it straight into the fire, which again is all that burst damage that goes out, kills himself, and then I have nothing left to use. Everyone's dead. There's fire mobs everywhere, and we wipe right here on the boss. And I don't want to be a toxic player, but in my experience, the worst player always leaves the dungeon first for some reason. The Destruction Warlock was not pulling the appropriate DPS that he needed to be doing for a plus 14, which ultimately is bringing the entire team down, and he's the first one to leave after the wipe on the boss. So, and that just goes to show that you really just need to pick those keys that you're comfortable with. A lot of people just want to get carried through a dungeon or come in with that low DPS expecting things to go well. And you're just hurting your team and you're hurting yourself, and ultimately it's just going to be a bad player experience. Overall though, we had a really good run with our first 3 dungeons. Those ones went super smooth. We had really good groups who knew what they were doing. Honestly, most of the people were over the item level required for those dungeons, so it wasn't an issue as far as the DPS went. But, you know, you have experiences like this where it doesn't go as well as you want it to, so we can't time them all, but doing 3 out of 4 is definitely not bad. We are going to end the video here. Thank you guys so much for watching. If there is any questions that you have as far as healers go, once again, I'm still learning Shaman, so I may not be a good source of that, but even if you have questions about dungeons, how mechanics work, stuff like that, let me know. I will happily elaborate on it for you, help you out so you guys can get better going into your dungeons as you push your keys. I also stream on Twitch, so if you want to catch me live, that link for my Twitch will be down in the description of this video. Once again, guys, thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.